And I'm sitting on the subway, the C train going uptown, and some gentleman who's promoting a jazz concert at the Apollo. Alcohol on his breath. It's 2 in the afternoon or 1 in the afternoon. And he sits down next to me and he says, you know, some things happen to people and say, why me? And all of a sudden, and then he says, and I say, why not me? And I was like, oh my. And
it's almost like someone was talking to you, right?
Like, oh no, that was a gift. I mean, that was something like just like an angel. I mean, I'm getting a little worked up, but I mean, that really, and Cynthia came home and I told her that story and I said, okay.
You can do this.
We're doing it.
Yeah.
Why not me?
Welcome to another episode of the Matthews Mentality Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Matthews, and today we're excited to welcome Jonathan Schein.
That's me.
The founder and CEO of Real Estate Limited Partner Institute, RELPI is the acronym, a globally connected community of best-in-class organizations and individuals devoted to the best practices in real estate, baby. We got a real estate guy in here. Real estate asset allocation and investment. He is also known for founding GlobeSt.com. I've heard of that.
You heard of that? It's still around?
Once or twice, yeah.
Okay.
Still around. Industry's leading online news platform and has a proven track record of adapting to the evolving global business trends. As special advisor for the Robert F. Kennedy Compass Conference, also heard of that guy. He connects top investors with meaningful opportunities. Jonathan brings valuable insights into commercial real estate and business growth, from founding GlobeSt.com to establishing RELPI. His entrepreneurial drive and ability to build successful companies set him apart. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm honored to be here, very much so. And I just want to, one correction, it's known as Relpi.
Relpi?
Relpi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Relpi, was there a debate that occurred, Relpi versus RELPI?
It was brought to my attention that it was Relpi when I first marketed it.
There you go. You know something about marketing.
I've been there. Yeah.
Or you spent, I don't want to say your whole life, but your whole life in marketing, it seems like.
Almost. I did start out as a real estate broker in New York City for 2 years.
Oh, I'm going to have to ask questions. And a stand-up comic.
I did that as well.
All right. So what are you doing today? What's keeping you busy?
What's keeping me busy is I launched this company, Relpi, 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, in the heat of COVID. And it was originally set up as a virtual meeting place for LPs, institutional investors, and private equity fund managers who are looking to raise capital from them. And in the evolving times, it actually was before vaccines came out. And as we started to evolve and started to see each other and hatch our heads out of the little cocoons we had, I created live events as well. And I spend most of my time curating these events all over the country and sometimes in Europe and Canada.
Walk the audience. Now, obviously, real estate, the audience has some background in there, but let's not assume everyone listening understands within the real estate field, what is an LP, GPO operator, institutional investors versus private client, without taking too much time, but just give them a high level so they can follow.
The institutional investor, as I see it, is the primordial ooze of the entire real estate industry. Mm-hmm. So the institutional investor will invest either in an individual developer's properties, or they will invest in a private equity firm such as, we'll use the term Blackstone. Okay, that's the most well-known one. And they raise their capital from traditionally what is known as an institutional investor, or LP, pension fund, endowment, foundation, or ultra-high net worth family offices.
I was going to ask, you just answered, define institutional, pension fund, endowment, or ultra-high net worth.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's where the private equity fund manager, such as a Blackstone, will either raise that capital for one of their funds and then also invest in one of these development companies.
Development company or a specific project.
Yes.
If it's large enough.
If it's big enough.
And so now you're primarily putting together events that kind of brings these people together and under one roof.
Yes, pretty much the top of the capital stack, essentially. The LP, which is the institutional investor world, and mostly GPs, the private equity fund managers. Occasionally there is an operating company or a developer which is large enough to be in the room with this group, but typically it's the private equity fund manager.
And so the institutional capital, what are some names that we can share with the audience that they may have heard of, some examples?
Let's say CalSTRS.
CalSTRS
would be a good one. New York State Common. State of Florida, Carnegie Foundation, firms like that, State of Illinois. We could come up with tons of others as well. Guggenheim Foundation.
And on the PE advisor side, you mentioned Blackstone.
They're not a client. They don't need us.
Yeah, Blackstone's done very well. What are the name of some of the bigger private equity platforms that you're rubbing elbows with every day?
Okay, J.P. Morgan.
Yeah, heard of them.
You've heard of them?
I think.
Okay, they're big.
Yeah.
They've been up there. Morgan Stanley has been a client. Heitman is a familiar name. What else can we come with? Madison Realty Capital on the debt side. Acor is also on the debt side. So we cover the gamut. Some of the bigger names out there.
What, and again, your focus is kind of on putting these people together and almost, I don't want to call it a relationship broker, but really, putting them all in one place and in terms of value, that's part of the value you're adding. But like, what are you hearing out there? What is the conversation? What are the themes you're hearing, both from the, PE advisor and the institutional investment side?
There's capital again.
That's good.
23 and 24 were really tough years,
Yeah,
especially
they
in the
were.
interest rate environment. And it wasn't just because of the interest rate environment. It was also something known as the denominator effect, which is that an institution can apportion a certain amount of its capital or assets under management to real estate. And it's usually not a big amount. It could say 5 to 8%,
Okay.
but of the entire portfolio. But what happened was these assets increased so much in value that it was no longer 5 to 8%, but they were pushing 10, 11, 12% of their entire
Interesting.
portfolio. So they couldn't devote any more money to commercial real estate until that settled down.
I did not know that.
Oh,
We
we're learning
learn something every day. Part of what I, aware that there was less capital over the last couple of years, obviously the interest rate and the disconnect. And even if they had capital, it was hard to find deals that penciled because of the cost of borrowing and even
Sure.
just the expectations from the LPs went up in terms of pref and promote and all that. Part of it was I was wondering if there was less capital because other investment opportunities were doing so, like, equities and obviously Mag 7, things like that. Is it because real estate was getting hit and other investment industries were smoothing along, smooth sailing? I was like, I wonder if real estate isn't just in vogue right now.
Well, I mean, look at public markets, public equities. When interest rates go up, they always take a hit, right? Because it's safer to be in credit. Certainly it's safer to be in federal credit, government bonds. And so there's always a shift towards safety. And the biggest part of fiduciary is risk management. It's not always about growth. It's protecting the wealth that's already been created. And so that was part of the issue as well. I mean, real estate was out of vogue, obviously, from 2020. Now we're 5 years past the opening shot of the pandemic. And so certainly office was, as we know.
Office has not been in vogue for 5 years. That's correct.
Well, it depends on the market.
Well, Midtown near Grand Central, I learned painfully we're expanding our Midtown office. And I'm sitting here thinking I got all the leverage in the world as a tenant. We want to be right near Grand Central. And I was in New York 2 months ago doing tours, talking to landlords, and they're quoting rents close to $100 a square foot.
And that's not even in the fancy buildings.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I was like, let's go check out One Vandy.
Oh, sure, yeah,
like
for 200,
250.
Yeah.
I was like, what is happening right now?
Well, there's a flight to quality.
Yeah.
And also, it's not just about quality; it's about modernization of the space.
Well, speaking of quality and modernizing a space, I want to get to the, again, I'm a little bit of a real estate geek, the GlobeSt, but let's go back in time from New York City.
Yep.
Born and raised.
Born in Yonkers,
Yonkers,
New York,
Yeah.
and split time between Westchester County with my mom and my dad, who moved to the city when I was about 5 years old.
My wife's from Westchester County, Yonkers, Bronxville. And so brothers, sisters?
Brother, I have an older brother.
Yeah.
And I have a younger sister from my dad's second marriage.
Okay. And so what was it like growing up in New York?
Well, it was very interesting. Well, the time we spent in the city was during the heyday of the 70s, which
Different city back
was a
then.
different city.
Yeah,
I mean,
a tough city.
Gritty. But I didn't know any better.
No, you
I
didn't.
was a kid. It was my city.
Plus, there was there's nothing online, so your mom couldn't click on every clickbait story about,
Absolutely.
kids
All I know
getting-
is at that point, Dad said, just don't walk over to Columbus Avenue. It's not safe. And now Columbus Avenue is one of the fanciest
Sure. Yeah.
it's high street retail
Yeah,
now.
it is.
but it was fun. New York was a fun place, and I just completely fell in love with the city and always wanted to live there, and I do now.
What were you, so I got to ask you about yourself. Like, what were you like as a kid? How would you describe
I would
yourself?
say I was mischievous.
Yeah.
I was definitely
Seems to be a
mischievous.
common theme with our guests, bright, mischievous.
It was hard to pin me down, and it was hard to get me to focus a lot. To get through school was a bit of a struggle, but I hungered down in like 10th through 12th grade when I realized, I might need to go to college.
And scoreboard's counting now.
Yeah, now it counts.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting time, but New York at that time was so much fun.
Now, we had breakfast before the show, so I'll cheat here a little bit. You had mentioned your parents came from, Depression era, so to
Sure.
speak. What was that like, and what were they like as parents, and what effect or imprinting on you do you think that had?
Well, my parents were the first in our neighborhood, and certainly my school, I think, to get a divorce.
Mhm.
Okay, it was not very commonplace at that time. So I had the advantage of living two kind of separate lives. And I will just say this, two parents in their 30s, getting divorced at that time was kind of wild and woolly.
Sure.
They had wild lives, but they made sure that my brother and me kept a little more conservative, as it were.
And so this was late 70s, early 80s to date?
Early 70s.
Early 70s.
Early
so,
70s.
So, you touched on it. That was not common
Nope.
in any community
No,
at the time.
we were trendsetters.
Trendsetters.
Yeah.
There you go. Did that? Were kids from divorce
Sure.
households back then? Was there like were they stigmatized? Would you felt stigmatized? Like, oh, your parents are divorced? Like,
They didn't even say that. At that time, the term was you come from a broken home.
Broken home.
And so,
Yeah.
it's like, my home's broken. You'd go home and say, my home's broken. The door works. The kitchen works. I didn't understand what broken home meant. And it became a little more commonplace as I got through my teen years. And it was an unfortunate term to use.
Did you ever, even just like kind of looking at your whole life professionally and all that you've accomplished, do you think that would, created a chip on your shoulder or kind of left in a long term?
I would say it did not leave a chip on my shoulder, but it left a deep want of what I thought was the compact nuclear family unit.
And is that just because you saw your friends?
Yeah.
And again, there wasn't social media, but you kind of would. It all works the same way. You only see the best moments.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then, growing up, you find out what horrible households they lived in.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it.
I'm not trying to make light of divorce, but some families you're like, man, they should have got divorced.
Yeah, right.
It would've been better.
I was like, what happened in your
especially
household?
again, I didn't live, so I guess I'm really just generalizing it. But especially back then, there were some. It sounds like some households they could be pretty toxic. And,
Oh wow.
Yeah. But because socially it wasn't acceptable to get a divorce.
Right, and you didn't talk about those things. Nobody talked about what was going on in their homes.
No.
Right? And so I was an outlier because they could see the result of an unhappy marriage.
Yeah.
But while others were just living the life of a family with an unhappy marriage.
What'd your parents do for a living?
Okay, my mother, she was kind of amazing. She went into marketing, and even at that time when I was young, she worked at Nestle in the marketing department, so she always got to bring home samples.
I was about to say,
she brought home samples, yes.
Yeah, what do they sample your own product?
Yeah,
there,
she got to bring home samples, and ultimately worked her way, which was really unusual, and she got her master's in marketing, master's degree in marketing.
Wow.
And went to school,
Safe
got
to
her
say
master's.
that had a big influence on
That
you.
had a big influence, that determination. And she ended up working at some of the bigger advertising firms in New York at that time. Doyle Dane Bernbach, which is a very well-known one. Benton and Bowles. These all got acquired by DDB Needham and Saatchi. But at that time, that was considered the gold standard.
And when you were at home with your mom, was like you just pick up on the vernacular marketing? Would she sit you down and say, "Let me tell you what I did today"? Like, I'm sure you learned
I think I
something about
absorbed it.
Yeah.
I absorbed it, but wasn't.
Osmosis.
Yeah, osmosis. I wasn't sitting there going, "So, Mom, what's the planned promotion for this particular product today?" Right? But you pick it up. And Dad was a part-time owner, and then became a full-time owner of something known as Real Estate Forum magazine. He started there in 1960 as a part-time editor, and then worked his way up to editor. When I was born, his salary, they gave him a raise. Went from $100 a week to $105 a week.
Dream big, baby.
Yeah, he went big. And then ultimately he bought some shares, and ultimately when the founding partner passed away, he bought the company in the late 70s.
It's funny, on a surface, it all makes sense. So your mom, you kind of develops this into almost like a marketing guru. Your dad's this real estate publications guru, and ultimately, like, just to
put it together,
jump to the end, those are the two probably main drivers of expertise and value in the career you've spent most of your life in.
I never even thought about
other than stand-up comedy.
Other than stand-up comedy, but I never actually put the two together because
see, this is a groundbreaking podcast.
This is like,
we're
my
going deep
God,
here.
do you know what I can do in therapy with this?
How much do therapists charge an hour?
I
Like,
don't know.
maybe I should.
Yeah, I think this is. I'm seriously, you're.
See, I'm in the wrong field.
Kyle, you're more than this. Okay.
I need to do more. I need to push myself. I need to find.
Yeah, you haven't pushed yourself hard enough, apparently.
So your mom in marketing, your dad in this publication. You had touched on. I think you said 10, 11, 12th grade. You kind of turned it on. What was the catalyst? Was it simply like, I got to go to college? And
yeah, that was pretty much it. And just to give you a little more of what life at home was like, and everybody has a home life, but my mother and my brother have IQs that are off the charts. Like, they're in Mensa. And
I love all my brothers. I ain't got that problem.
Yeah. Consider yourself fortunate.
Zach, don't make that into a sound clip, right?
Okay.
Because they're gonna be all bitter.
Yeah, okay. The non-Mensa family.
Yeah.
And I was what they call at that time slow.
Yeah, he's a little slow.
He's a little slow. I mean, literally a little slow. And so I was intimidated by my surroundings. When you're in that kind of environment, and the language and the communication and the experience and the intelligence and the intellect going back and forth, you just sit there and you literally become the observer, which helps in stand-up comedy and other things that you do. And
is your brother older?
He's older.
Okay.
And when he went to college, he's 4 years older than me. I guess I probably was able to learn. I started evolving myself.
Yeah. And if where'd your brother go to school? Did he kind of leverage that genius into something?
Well, he
went to MIT.
He went to Syracuse.
Yeah.
And graduated with a degree in marketing, as it were.
It's in the blood.
It's in the blood. And he came to New York and established a career as an actor and writer.
Okay.
Yeah.
You wrote Seinfeld?
No, he did not write Seinfeld, but he's done okay.
Whoever wrote Seinfeld is a genius.
Yeah.
So where'd you end up going to school?
I went to George Washington University.
GW,
yes, home of the Colonials.
That's right.
I just want to say right here, they do not have a football team. No. I do not have to talk about football here.
Don't worry, not a football podcast.
Okay.
I don't even think I'd be interested in doing a football podcast. I've had enough football.
Yeah,
in my
you've
life.
done that. Yeah.
GW, my wife's Uncle Timmy played basketball at GW. I want to say late 60s.
Oh, wow.
Early 70s.
They had a pretty good program.
They're solid. Yeah, they were good. Yeah. And they've had a couple of good, they're one of those teams that'll get hot every now and then.
Yeah, and they haven't been hot.
But incredible location.
Oh, my God. I had like combining, I went to school for finance, loved business, but I also loved politics. And I had Potomac fever, and I just loved it.
It was all, I lived in Georgetown right after school. I had to build my resume because football isn't like, doesn't necessarily position you for work. And I lived in Georgetown, but I'd walk to work. It was roughly, a mile and a half. So I'd basically walk by GW. And I was like, man, this is such a cool place.
It was a really great place. And, evolving from the city, having a city campus was wonderful.
How was college?
Loved it.
Yeah?
Absolutely loved it.
What'd you focus on?
Finance. And I worked at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. My favorite story is my next door neighbor on my floor in my building where I got a rental was Paul Volcker.
I've heard of that guy.
The Fed chief.
Yeah.
He was great. He was such a nice man. And when he got renominated by Reagan, I think in like 83 or 84, we decided all these college kids decided to have a barbecue for him in the parking lot, and he came.
That's so
He showed
cool.
up.
I mean, was he a cigar?
He had the cigar, the
Yeah.
box. He had always carried the cigar
this is
box.
the guy who broke inflation, so to speak.
Yeah. He broke a lot of things, but he did
broke
it.
a lot
He
of
did it
things.
well.
He did. But hey,
He was great.
he took it appears, I'm not an expert, but like he took the shortest path to solving the challenges, no matter what the pain was, right?
Of the late 70s.
Yeah.
The gas shocks and everything else.
Everything. And
The oil shocks, yeah.
And I think to this day, especially Jerome Powell is very much a student of what happened and how Volcker attacked it. And obviously not to the magnitude of like interest rate increase, but like I think that drives some of Jerome Powell's thinking. And really every Fed sends him. Very, very influential person.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the fact that he showed up at our barbecue was just an honor for all of us.
Yeah, it kind of makes you like him more. Like
he's a real person.
A real person, a man of the people. Nowadays, so many politicians or people in those positions are kind of packaged.
Yeah, he was not packaged.
So why didn't you go into politics?
I really thought about it, but what I saw in Washington, because I had been there for 4 years, every 2 years, people move out and new people move in, and I didn't think I would ever make deep connections there.
Yeah,
and it had more to do with connecting than the work itself.
And you mean like in terms of rising up the ranks, let's call it, it really was about connections and who you knew and the challenge you saw. Yeah, I guess every 2 years you count midterms. I mean,
and that's it.
And again, the way the
way it works.
America's cyclical. We just saw in this last election cycle. Every 2 years, people are changing.
Frankly, I'm kind of glad I didn't go into politics.
Yeah,
I don't know how anybody does it.
Again, I'm not in it, and I won't be going in it. But it doesn't seem like they're the happiest bunch.
No, and as I said, I value my friendships and my relationships, and if every 2 years you have to start all over again, I don't think that doesn't work for my personality.
So you graduate. All right, you graduate. Yeah. What your major was finance in? Just finance?
Finance.
But the marketing you certainly had exposure to through your mom, but it wasn't a formal. Was that in graduating say, what do I want to do with my career? Did you from day one say, hey, I think I want to lean into some effect, like amalgamation of my family business?
Well, yeah, I did. I always wanted to work with Dad, go into the family business.
Now, was that, you said you wanted to, but was that also being communicated from your dad? Like, hey, when you graduate, you're coming and working here?
No, he didn't want me to work for him.
Okay.
He actually said, you can't work for me for at least 2 years. I want you to get a job in real estate so you know what real hard work is. And so I became a broker and a salesperson in the city, yes.
Oh, let's talk about this.
Yeah, this was...
How was it?
It was brutally painful.
It was brutally painful.
And I kind of got on the lowest end of the real estate spectrum from my perspective at that time. And I'm not dissing anybody and what they do, but I became a retail store broker in Manhattan.
Leasing.
Yeah. And that's when you literally, this is before co-stars and all these other things, you walked the streets writing down the name of every. I pounded the pavement, and you in your shoes and your suit and your tie at that time.
No matter how cold or hot,
it didn't matter. If it was raining, if it was snowing, and you just walked out. You took the names of the stores, who owned them or who were running them, the numbers of the addresses. You then go into something called the reverse directory. At that point, you'd call up. You'd try and get to the owner to see if you could represent that space. Should it become vacant?
Yeah, you guys are the OGs of the business. See, I got to hide behind my phone,
right? And
the internet.
It was quite.
People. I made 500 cold calls a week, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's so brutal." I was like, "I wasn't doing what you were doing."
And it was more of a Glenn Ross experience.
The leads are shit.
Yeah. It was definitely.
Well, did Alex Baldwin ever come down from Mitch and Murray downtown? And
no, Mitch and Murray never gave us the good leads. But our magazines, Real Estate Forum, were on the set of Glenn Ross.
Were they?
They were on the set.
What a movie. First of all, like critically acclaimed, box office bomb, because like unless you really love acting or real estate, it doesn't resonate. But what a cast.
The cast
It's
is
insane.
It starts with
Just if you're in the audience, if you're listening and you're in real estate, you have to watch Glengarry Glen Ross.
I mean, most of us can quote it. From, I mean, it's
Jeez,
I mean, these
most
are
of
old
the
time
quotes we can't say here. You know?
No, but I mean, you're talking about Alec Baldwin,
Al
Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Alan Arkin, Jonathan Price,
Kevin Spacey,
Kevin Spacey, and
Ed Harris? Is it Ed Harris?
Ed Harris. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
crazy.
That's insane.
It's
I
insane.
mean, you can't get a group like that together.
No. And it was basically shot, almost the entire thing shot in the same little office set.
Yeah, basically a Chinese restaurant.
It was as close to, from a movie perspective, as like a play that I've ever seen.
Well, it was a play.
Yeah.
Originally a play by David Mamet.
Yeah.
And so
The Glengarry
and it had
leads.
Mamet language.
Who stole the leads.
Yeah.
So that you didn't get the Glengarry leads. You had
No.
to find the leads. And 2 years, and I mean, if you said, hey, I want you to know what hard work is.
You'll be begging to come back and work.
Did you find hard work?
I found hard work.
Were you begging to come back?
I said, hey, Dad, I think it's time.
And he was like, okay, son.
All right. Yeah, you did it.
The prodigal son returns.
Yeah, yes. I'll take you in now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's great. Did you ever have, like, just in brokerage, was there ever a moment where you considered staying or you had some big win?
Yes.
Tell us about one of those.
My big win at that time was I leased the space to the Learning Annex on the second floor of 85th and Broadway. And I thought, wow, I'm actually starting to get good at this. And I'm enjoying it. But the writing was on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a really credible business to go into.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I always was really, I was the editor of the high school newspaper, and I always enjoyed the content side of the world.
Interesting.
It's a little more neutral.
Sure.
There's never, you know, in brokerage, it's winners and losers. And
that it is.
That it is. And
we have a competition here called Winners and Losers.
do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is Glengarry, Glen Ross, Matthews.
Our agents, they call first of all, you call each other out like, hey, I'm calling out, you know, Tommy, and then you pick what to compete. Is it calls? Is it proposals? Is it push-ups? Whatever you want, and then there's winners and losers. You know? And like we don't sugarcoat what you are when you lose. You're a loser.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Do you get to reinvent yourself the next day?
Matthews culture, baby.
Okay, Matthews, Glengarry, Glen Ross.
There you go.
Do you get to come back the next day and try and reclaim the crown?
Yeah, you do. It's a competition run over, and every week you have a new competitor, and it runs over 12 weeks. And at the end of the competition, maybe you've had 8 wins and 4 losses, and if you're number 1 on the board,
what do you get?
You get a set of steak knives. You know,
sounds like more like Hunger Games.
Set of steak knives. No. We actually give out pretty awesome prizes.
Okay,
here, but I'll keep that between us.
All right.
So I'll tell you offline. So it's you 2 years in, you start to feel like, hey, I think I could do this, but the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
What was it like when you went to work for your dad?
Well, I started at the bottom selling advertising space. Yep.
I would have just stayed a broker.
Yeah, well, I thought about it the next day.
At least you have real space.
Yeah, you're selling paper and ink and air. And I started there selling, by the way, it was known as print media back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I started just working of course, when your dad owns the company and you show some talent, you're going to move up, which creates different havoc within the company. And my dad was a unique boss.
How so?
Well, great mentor. Love him. He's still alive. He's 93 years old. He's fantastic. But his background was he was the son of a Polish immigrant in the Bronx. And he started working at 9 years old. So his expectations
were a little different.
Were a little different than mine.
So he didn't necessarily buy into work-life balance, right?
No. I remember the first time I suggested, hey, Dad, think we could try and implement personal days? He said, what's that? What's that? And I tried to explain it to him, and he went nuts. It's like, if my father, a personal day, you didn't get a personal day at the candy store.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a personal day. I said, okay, why don't we start slow?
Yeah, start slow.
Well,
you went back to your guys out on the floor like, hey, I'm working on it.
Okay. I said, how about this? Could we try Casual Fridays?
Oh, have you ever seen the Larry David skit on Casual
No,
Friday?
I haven't.
Okay, when we're done, have you
okay.
guys seen the kid? Yeah, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Okay, you guys, audience, go to YouTube and type in Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Casual Fridays. Like the guy walks in and his attorney's dressed in like jeans. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I did. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I posted this.
Okay. I'll take.
It's
I'll
so
have to
good.
watch this. But that was the first entry.
Your dad's the guy. He walks in. He goes, "What's this? Casual Fridays." Like, why are you dressed casually? Well, it's just a thing. He's like, "I don't want you to be casual. I want you to be serious." He's like, "Oh, it's just a thing." He's like, "Well, it's not a thing. Like you're casual. I'm not looking for someone who's." And he just one of the guys.
I got to see this.
He just loses his mind, and that's your dad.
One of the reasons we stopped watching Curb Your Enthusiasm is my wife didn't want to be in the room with the two of us at the same time.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Get a little.
So
why are you like him?
Yeah. All of a sudden, she started seeing everything about Larry David and
or vice versa.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
We had to stop watching it.
A Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm, just all-time shows for what it's worth.
So Casual Friday is where we started, and he's like, "What does that mean?"
Yeah.
No tie. No tie?
Why?
Yeah. What's the point? And finally, I worked it.
Over 40 years.
I was able to.
That's funny.
Get there.
So you're selling print advertising, selling advertising space. What was your life like? And I'm going to just ask you the question, like, were you a hard worker? Were you given everything you had? And really, I want to lead that into what was motivating you at the time.
I really did work hard. Okay. I really did put my efforts in. And I also, when you're working for your dad, it goes two ways. You can be the guy that's given everything, or the guy that, or the woman that wants to prove themselves. And I felt I needed to prove myself to earn my place in the company.
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was going to say, did you feel self-conscious about what others potentially were thinking about
Absolutely.
you? Okay.
Absolutely. There's the kid with the silver spoon, and it was never like that. The company, when Dad, until he was able to acquire the company in the late 70s, things were tight.
Sure.
We were the first broken home, and frankly, not a lot of money was coming in, and Mom had to go out and get a job, right, which was unusual. And she got her job, and then she got a job. She moved up through the ranks and achieved. But there was not a lot of money until he was able to buy out the company. But there was still an earn out, so there's still no money coming in. So things didn't really prosper till the 80s.
Okay.
And so we worked.
Were you able to kind of accomplish one of your goals at the time, which is ultimately, these are my words.
Yeah.
But earn the respect of your coworkers. You say, "Hey, I'm not here, or I'm not rising up the ranks just because my dad's the boss. Like, I'm earning it." Were you able to? Did you ever feel, or did someone ever say something to you that made you feel that you had accomplished that desire?
Actually, I had the opposite effect. I really never did get the respect that I thought I earned and worked for.
Oh.
And so, that was a painful experience.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we were able to sell the company. We'll get into that in a little bit. And so I was able to establish my own way from there.
Yeah. I mean, I get the drivers different. My dad didn't own the company, but I always felt like I was trying to prove, like, no, I'm my own guy. And some people were like, they give you credit, and others, they're never going to. And then most of them, I found out, actually weren't thinking about me.
That's the part that really hurts the narcissist the most.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about me?
What do you mean? Like, gosh, no, it's so true. And so, but no, I empathize with that end. So it's a good driver, though. Were there other drivers or motivations at the time? You touched on money.
I'm going to say this. When I got out of college, I was like Alex P. Keaton. If you remember Alex P. Keaton I was that guy. I was just this motivated, hungry person with his
take over the world.
Yeah, rep tie. And I just, grew up in that Wall Street type of ethic. Not the lack of ethics, but that drive.
The drive to be successful.
The drive.
They talk about today, like in the 80s, it glorified success, and not the achieving of success you should the way Gordon Gekko did,
right.
but that culture.
Yes, and I came out of that culture. That happened in the 80s, right? And you just kept buckling down. You kept grinding it out, and you kept grinding it out until something would happen.
And so what was the first big thing that happened to you professionally? You had mentioned a sale. Was that it?
Yes,
Or,
that
okay.
was actually by the time Dad got into his late 60s, we were talking about, and we had just gone through the real estate depression of the late 80s and early 90s, and business was really
That was
tough.
the savings and loans
Yeah,
and then
the whole thing,
RTC
the
and
RTC, and
yeah.
there was no advertising, right? And we just had to figure out how to get through it. And by the time it became 95, 96, like Sam Zell said, stay alive till 95, things really started popping. And about 97, 98, I said, I had a talk with my dad. I said, look, we don't want to go through this again. Maybe, and the market is getting frothy for media companies. Maybe we should sell. And so I contacted a few investment bankers and ultimately was able to package the business up for sale to a private equity firm of Wasserstein Perella. No, Bruce Wasserstein.
Sure.
Bruce Wasserstein was my boss, or essentially the owner of my bosses.
And your dad, was that a long conversation, or was he already kind of mentally there too?
He was there.
Yeah.
He was there. He's like,
beating that.
I'm tired. He had the time of his life, but to get a buyout after all that was really good for him and good for me. It helped me become who.
Well, let's talk about that. How was it good for you? What did it lead to? What did post sale look like?
Post sale, it was a little bumpy at first because I didn't know what it was like to have any other bosses other than my dad.
And now you have a board.
It's a board, and private equity is an entirely different animal. As if another publishing house or media company had acquired us, that would have been considered a bolt-on acquisition, and you figure out who's going to work with who and what divisions are going to be what. When you're bought by private equity,
yeah.
they want earnings, they want growth, they want earnings, and so I had to really buckle down and figure out what am I going to do with this company to make it work.
And what'd you do to make it work?
Well, first because I was still a print geek kind of guy, we started launching regional magazines. One called Real Estate Southern California.
Yeah, that me growing up in the business.
Yeah,
I remember
that launched that, and Real
Yeah.
Estate Chicago, and
Sure.
Real Estate New York. But it was also at the precipice of the .com era. So 99, 2000,
The bubble.
the bubble. Pets.com.
Pets.com.
There we go. Pets.com and everything else that went with it. And I thought, well, it seems like it would be a really good idea if we somehow were able to create an internet or World Wide Web presence
Sure.
at this time where we're all kind of figuring out, do I still need an AOL address? My wife and I had a joint email account. We didn't know we could have separate ones at that time. And so I looked at the world. I presented something to the board of what was then Real Estate Media, and they wanted this kind of growth. They were believing in the .com era. They were doing a lot of investments in there as well. I said, there's nothing like this that exists on the planet, and it turned out to be GlobeSt.com.
Question, and I always have this question about great ideas. The idea of becoming effectively an online company in addition to your print. You touched on this a little bit, but is it epiphany? Is it just this one moment you drive in the car, you're sitting on the train, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have this idea? Or is it actually just a slow evolution and iteration, 100 different iterations of an original idea that's very crude and rudimentary and becomes this refined idea that put into place is very successful? Like, was there a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I know what to do? Or was it just kind of, it have slowly evolved?
I had created a website for Real Estate Forum magazine before we got acquired, and it was just this nascent thing that I didn't know what to do with, but I knew that I needed to like figure out what this is, sort of tinker around. And then there was a moment after we got acquired where there was an epiphany, actually. It was a slow burn, then a quick burn. And there was this moment where I said, oh my, we will not survive if we don't create an internet presence. And what happened was I had seen the launch of the Real Estate Internet Society, which I don't even think exists anymore. And I went, those people are going to capture content. They're going to capture a market that we don't even know exists yet. And we need to make plans to exist in that marketplace. And that's how it was. There was like, I had the website and we were all kind of chatting about what do we do on the interweb, as it were. And then that moment came where I said, look, I got to come up and see you guys. Went up to 6th Avenue, went to their offices, said, if we don't do something now, we're not going to make it.
And did they buy in right away?
Right away. Right away. They had that.
Was it asking for more capital?
Oh, we needed capital.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to come out of cash flow.
One of the things I was really excited to ask you is in terms of needing the capital, when did you buy the domain GlobeSt? I love the domain. And did you try and buy it with the EET at the end too?
Of course, we tried to buy it with the EET. Well, I had a designer, I would say a marketing professional who came up with that name. Because originally, we were supposed to expand it all over the planet, GlobeSt. But then the .bomb had hit and we didn't have to. But thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was sitting on it? Some guy?
Nobody.
No, come on.
Nobody was sitting on GlobeSt.com. Nobody.
Good for you.
Yeah. Sometimes you just, you got to be luckier than smart.
I think I had to pay $60,000 for Matthews.com. It was 2015. Which I actually think I got a great deal. I'm sure.
I'll tell you about Relpi in a little bit.
Yeah.
And how I got that domain name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which GlobeSt, no one's sitting on it. Fast forward, whatever, 20, 30 years. Relpi, which just from an acronym, you're like, it's probably not the most common, but Matthews.com, I feel like it's a great domain.
That's
great
fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, my God.
But it was literally like, this is like a bad cliche.
Did you go through a broker?
We went through, I think we went through the GoDaddies and
auction and all that.
Yeah. And then, probably through some communication process within that website broker, GoDaddy or whatever we use, like we started trading emails with the guy. He legit was like, some dude sitting in his parents' basement who'd been sitting on the site. He registered in 95.
Yep.
And in 2015, it was coming up. And the date was coming up. And so we're like, okay, he's not going to re-register this. He's not going to re-register. So we were waiting. And all of a sudden, like, literally a week before it expired to where you could just grab it, he re-registers.
There you go.
Like, damn it. So then we reach out and he drove a hard bargain, but
I'd say it pays off.
So many young listeners, like they don't even think about this wild west of the internet of like somebody grabbed pets.com and sat on it, maybe for a couple of years and sold it for, I think it was like 400 million or something. But yeah, GlobeSt is a great domain.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, all right. So the idea of GlobeSt, it sounds like it was.
And I didn't do it alone. I had a team, of course.
Of course. You pitched your PE partners. They said, we get it. They've added funding or increased capital allocation. And then talk to us about those first couple of years of going from old school print to new school online.
Well, it was the wild west, as you said. And it was before canned spam laws and all that. And we were just going.
Because those went in 2003?
Yeah. We were just going in and scraping websites and getting email addresses and all the
machine gunning.
Oh, it was, you don't do this at home. But at that time, you could do it.
You weren't breaking a law.
Yeah. We're breaking no laws, but we were annoying people.
And if you were, it's past the statute of limitations.
Yeah,
so
if we were annoying people, right? And a few people said, what is this? What is this newsletter? But at some point we launched in 2000, and we just kept at it, kept sending daily news out to the real estate community, about 30,000 people. It started catching on. And people started saying, hey, nobody's going to read their news on their computer, was the refrain. That was it.
Turns out they were wrong.
And so we just kept pushing it and kept pushing the news. And eventually it caught on. And one of the things, and I think I told you this earlier, was I was sitting with the CEO of one of the larger brokerage firms, global brokerage firms. And he says, Jonathan, I love GlobeSt. I read it every day. I have my secretary print out the news for me.
And that's when you knew you had something.
I knew we had something.
Even when the old guys,
but he's printing it out, and I was like, no, you're supposed to read it on your desktop. But I wasn't going to correct. I wasn't going to correct him.
Was it profitable, or was this kind of this new foray? Was it profitable day one, or did it take time to turn?
It took about a year to start generating revenues, and what we did in that time was also used as a marketing medium for what was then GlobeSt and real estate media. Was able to launch a conferences company off of that, known as Real Share Conferences. Yep.
I've gone to literally hundreds of those. I'm sure we've exhibited at them. Yeah.
And so that helped create awareness for real share conferences. So it wasn't just about getting people to read. We learned that this was actually a great marketing tool.
Let me push pause on your career arc and say, a lot of people say, I want to be the boss. I want to run a company. I want to be the CEO. What were some of the things, both good and probably more so not so good about that role that maybe the audience, if they haven't been in that role, it's not necessarily as glamorous of a job. I mean, again, nobody twisted your arm to do it, but what are some of the unknowns about running an organization? And maybe it's unique to that industry you're in that, the average everyday listener is like, you have no idea what I had to battle.
Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, marketing dollars are expendable, as it were.
Yeah.
Cyclical and expendable. And when things go south,
it's the first thing.
The first thing that is cut is PR and marketing, which is actually antithetical to try and keeping your business going. It's probably the best time to market, especially since others are not. And so having to explain to owners, right? If it was me and my dad, the market's going south, we could talk about it. He wouldn't say, well, what's your plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a board of directors,
it's different.
It's different. What's your plan? Your job is on the line. Okay. What I will say this in terms of acquiring my own family business through private equity, the mistake I made was bringing some people along who did not respect me.
And when you say people, you mean people at the actual company?
At the company, not private equity,
but
the company itself. They just say, oh, you're Jerry's kid. You're always going to be Jerry's kid.
Why did you do that?
Well, when you get acquired, a lot of it is they buy management in place.
Yeah.
And that was part of the deal. Oh, what kind of management do you have in place? Do you have people who can run this, and this? My mistake was that I let it go on too long.
Yeah.
And I think whether you're launching a business or growing your business, there are people that, come along with you that you instinctively know that they shouldn't be there anymore, but you still keep them.
Why?
That's the great question, the great why. I think part of it is there's a sense of guilt.
Yes.
Sense of guilt that, well, they were with me during all these times, but they didn't grow to the task at hand.
Yeah, it's the word grow. Because I have to think about this. It's people grow, or you hope they do, and at different paces. But so do companies.
Yes.
And what I call alignment is when the person in the role they're at and the skills and the energy and the execution they bring to the table is perfectly aligned with what the company's needs are in general or in that role. It's great. But the company keeps growing and the individual keeps growing. Anytime that the pace of growth, and it's not subjective, it's not measurable, but is unaligned. They grow faster than the company. If you don't have a spot to promote them in, you're probably going to lose them, right? And anytime the company grows faster than them, that creates challenges as well.
That was the challenge I worked with.
And in addition to that, one of the questions I had is, do you think part of the reason you kept him around was some loyalty, allegiance, or guilt in terms of these are your father's people?
Yes. And there was a safety factor too. It's the devil you know.
Yeah.
And that was part of it as well. And that was definitely part of the loyalty.
And again, if he's out of the business and effectively, it's really the PE company is more who you should be asking these questions to. But did you go to your dad and say, hey, Dad, I think I need to let Joe go, but he's been here 20 years. Like, would you be okay with that? Would you still go for him for approval for these things, or?
I would go to him for advice.
Counsel, yeah.
Counsel. And he would always say, he always had a great saying, when in doubt, leave it out. Right? And I didn't leave some of my doubts out. I kept them with me, and I paid a price.
Well,
on a personal level, more than a business level.
What was the price personal? Just anguish and
anxiety, and I think we probably could have grown even more.
Because I was gonna ask, and this is why you're here, because I don't know this for certain, but from not afar, I was in the industry by then, but within the industry, at least, optically, it seemed like the business did great.
It did fantastic, and I think it could have done better.
And so how long were you in the role as CEO with your investors before you guys or they exited?
Okay, so they didn't exit yet. One of the issues was that I had been there for 6 years, And
This was like
99 to
okay.
2005,
6.
6, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, maybe 7 years. And they rolled us into, you know, what PE firms do is they roll up, and they rolled us into another larger media company.
The bigger you are, the more predictable the income. The more predictable the income, the better the multiples.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. And they had a CEO. It was a much bigger company. And all of a sudden, I found myself not reporting to PE.
What company was this?
ALM.
ALM. That's
ALM.
right. I
right.
knew that answer.
ALM. And I found myself reporting to another CEO as opposed to reporting to what I felt was my comfort level with PE. And, you know, CEOs don't report to CEOs.
Yeah.
It didn't work. It was, and 6 months later, after I took my chips off the table, and
Liquidity event.
It's
It's such a beautiful way to say it.
It's a wonderful way of saying your payoff.
Because saying like I got my money, that sounds
No.
kind of like
a liquidity
rude.
event.
A liquidity event.
As you get older, liquidity event has totally different meaning.
Yeah.
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 Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
Too soon?
No, it's great.
Okay.
So you
I took my
well hold on, actually I want to hold on I want to so you have this sale to ALM.
yeah.
Certainly I hear you. Now
Within
you,
the fund. Within the fund.
But there is a transfer of monies.
Yes.
And now you have a boss and you're like, nah, I didn't sign up. I signed up for that boss, but not this boss.
Right.
6 months, you have your liquidity event. What was it like? Well, you had this idea, you got into business with your dad, then you kind of hatched this idea, this epiphany, whatever it was. You pitched them on it. They bought in. So good salesmanship. Now you said, hey, I could have done better and I had some people, but to a degree, if I may, you executed on that idea. And let me start by asking, were the investors, the PE platform, were they happy with and again, maybe you've asked this question, maybe we're just guessing here. From the day you said, hey, this is what we should do, and here's the money I need, to their internal fund, were they satisfied?
They were very happy.
There you go.
And in the world of media, and because they are money managers and they have fiduciary responsibility to their investors, once you rolled GlobeSt into ALM, GlobeSt was worth twice as much because of the size, because of the size of the company.
How big was the company?
At that time when I was running it, $16 million with a valuation. The valuation doubled. I can't tell you what it was.
Yeah,
I
understand.
But once you have scale, as you said, and it was in a larger platform, it was worth twice as much.
So 15 million of revenue?
Yeah.
How many employees, I meant to ask?
Oh.
Or people? Yeah.
About 35.
Okay.
Across the
Because
country.
I know you were in different regions,
yeah.
so I didn't know. All right.
Kind of virtual in a way.
And so what I wanted to just ask about was, and again, maybe it's not, you can't go buy the New York Nets or the New York Jets, excuse me.
Oh gosh.
Why
did you bring that up?
Because you said you're a Jets fan. But when that deal closed and you earned some money, was that satisfying? They said, hey, you know what,
No, because what I had been doing and what I thought my responsibilities were immediately changed, and I was no longer the guy, right? And there's a lot of ego.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ego and a lot of pride, and I felt that my role had been diminished, and it was. And not within the industry, but within my own personal stature within the ownership of the company.
Were you part of the decision at all to, even if it's within funds, to sell? Or was it just like, hey, we're doing this? And
basically, they asked for my buy-in. And what am I going to say? No.
And you're like, okay.
No, it's not a good idea. And they're going to be like, well, we think it is. So I might as well try and... So I was there for a year. And within 6 months, I realized it wasn't working. And then I went out, and this is 2006, and I decided to start my own company in print media and acquired a small magazine in upstate New York that focused on residential. We had a home in Woodstock, New York, and I really loved the publication. I said, this is interesting. It's like becoming the sheriff of a small town. And it was a wonderful thing to do. And then I was able, once my non-compete ended, I was able to start commercial real estate magazines on a regional basis. And I was, like everybody, we were all geniuses in 2006. And
I was going to say, great timing on the sale in 2006, and then maybe not as great timing to acquire. No. So I guess
in 2008, the world ended.
How'd you get through the GFC? That must have been tough.
It was
Because again, real estate was brutal. And then you're right, advertising.
Print advertising and real estate,
Yeah.
I barely made it. I mean, I didn't make it. I had to fold the business.
Mm.
I just had to fold the business. I put everything I had into it, and it wasn't that I didn't believe in the product. I looked at how long will it take for it to come back for me to be able to have a lifestyle, and it still hasn't come back.
Yeah, and it you know, especially with digital advertising, if it did, it came back in a different way.
It came back. It wasn't going to come back in the traditional sense.
Question for you: business failure, right? How'd you handle that? And it really mentally
poorly.
Like,
I mean, I wouldn't say poorly. I did what I had to do. I went out and I found a job. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I took over the publishing of National Real Estate Investor because Wasserstein Perella had then owned that with a different group called Penton. So I had to go back into I would call the working world, and my pride was crushed. And I went into, I guess, not a functional depression. Maybe I was functionally able to work and work hard, but I was depressed.
But you weren't happy.
No, I mean, how can you be?
No, I
mean, I don't mean that in any other way than you should be.
Yeah,
upset
because it's not fun. And I was gonna say, like, I speak for myself. I think I speak for a lot of people. It's like, what is your biggest fear? A lot of times it is fear of failure. And then you were faced with the reality of having to process through that. And it's always interesting. So how did that go? Was it as bad as you thought it would be? I'm not saying it was good, but like, or
bad as I thought it could be was I can't get out of bed, right? But I had to make a living. So you really, in some ways, don't have the opportunity to process it, right? You have to process it bit by bit. And
yeah, because you got to stay busy.
You got to stay busy.
It's probably the blessing.
Yeah,
right?
I had to stay busy, and I was blessed enough to be able to get a job in the industry again.
Yeah, especially at that time.
At that time.
And that's a testament to your resume.
Thank you. That was 2011, and things were, not.
No, 2011 was not great. It wasn't 2009, but it wasn't great. By 2015, I felt like we were pretty back and humming. But and so, what'd you do at that point?
Well, I took the job, and it was with a really big company, and I am not a big company kind of guy.
Why do you like? What do you mean by that?
You're literally a pebble in a huge driveway.
It's super bureaucratic,
very
bureaucratic, and inefficient. It's like the government.
And it's also, there's a lot of territories.
Yeah.
And I don't understand politics, territories. And
it's like Survivor.
Yeah, and I'm not very political, frankly. And I think that's just a matter of coming out of an entrepreneurial background. Politics is not my number one forte.
Well, you didn't choose to go into it when you were 22.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I worked there for about a couple of years, and that didn't work out.
But you got back on your feet, so to speak, and you started creating momentum. What came next?
I got a paycheck.
Yeah.
I got health care.
Yeah.
Right. And what came next is, first time in my life, I got fired.
Oh.
Got fired.
What happened?
I didn't grow the business fast enough.
No, I mean, like, did they walk you in, like, give you a box and perp walk you out?
This is a great story.
We've had guys here. I mean, super successful guys. They tell these stories of them getting fired.
This is the
They're really good.
So my mother once got fired, and I had to pick her up, and she was on the street with the box crying, and I was like, I'm never going for the box. That's never going to happen.
Did you take the goldfish on the way out?
No, everything. So I knew I was getting fired. They were transmitting I was going to get fired. And so in the middle of the year of 2013, so I decided one night, and I took everything in my office, took it home. Pictures off the wall, pictures, everything, everything that I own, the 8-ball, whatever it is you have in your office. I only had my coffee mug, right? And
said world's best boss.
Well, yeah, sure.
Is that what Michael Scott said in Dunder Mifflin? Is like world's best boss?
Yeah.
There you go.
So I empty out my office. So this is like July, August, maybe September. And the boss comes in and he says, wait a minute, where's all your stuff? And I really didn't know what to do. So I said, well, I read a book on feng shui and I learned how to cleanse my office. I'm much more efficient now.
That's hilarious.
Right? And he was like, what? I was like, it's one of those moments in life where you're given a gift.
Yeah.
And so they thought I had a new job. So they didn't have to fire me and sever me and give me money. But I kept showing up, like the Penske file on Seinfeld. I just kept showing up.
Yeah.
And
Milton in The Office.
Yeah. You know? I just kept showing up. Finally, by December, they said, this guy's not going away. And so they finally had to let me go.
Good.
And I at that point had gotten on about 50 interviews and was having trouble getting it, but I finally landed a position.
And that was at Institutional Real Estate?
Institutional Real Estate Inc. And that really changed my life.
How so?
Well, I came into a part of the industry I was not aware of. And the LPGP, bringing it back to the LPGP
the capital stack,
the
baby.
capital stack. And I'll never forget, and it was a wonderful experience, Institutional Real Estate Inc. I came on as head of sales, and I remember going to this first meeting where the LPs and GPs got together, and they were speaking a language I did not understand. I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
It's a complete
Terminology,
nomenclature
yeah.
is completely different than brokers and developers.
Yeah.
Totally different. And I remember in the middle of the session, when there was a break, I went to my room, I called my wife, and I said, I'm never going to make it. I mean, I was in total panic and fear. I don't know what these people are talking about. She said, well, you're in real estate, aren't you? And I finally said, this isn't real estate. I don't know what they're talking about.
This is finance.
I don't know
High
what
Street
is going
finance,
on
yeah.
in this room. And ultimately, over time, I worked my way through that fear to kind of acquire the information and the knowledge enough to be able to have a conversation to the point where I was able to lead these sessions.
Yeah, it's and you fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it.
I had a similar experience. About 10 years in my business, and I didn't want to be like Johnny Private Client guy the rest of my life, like only as good as your next cold call. I was like, I got to get in with these bigger owners that are more annuity clients. They're always going to be buying and selling, 10, 20 deals a year, as opposed to like just trying to hit the, private owner.
The one-offs.
The 1031. And I remember one of my very close friends to this day, Matt Golden, was running the Western US for Kimco, which is a monster, retail operating platform GP, and Connor and Ross run it now. They're very close buddies. They do a great job. And the first like institutional pitch I ever went on, it was Kimco was the operating partner, and Prudential was the money, was the the institutional equity. And I remember I'm on like this meeting, and they're like, what are you seeing like from a capital stack perspective? Like, who are the active players? Like, what are you seeing pref promotes? Like, what are you seeing out there? What type of market is it? I was like, I would say it's strong to quite strong. And like the Prudential person didn't pick up on it. I swear to God, Matt Golden looked at me, and he kind of like he knew where the quote was from. It was from, I think, Meet the Fockers. Like, I would say it's the market is pretty strong to quite strong in the GPLP promote part of it. And he gave me this look like, what? And I just like, shut up.
It's like, I'm a mammal. Can you milk me?
Yeah. And this is to this day. I say, hey, Google it. Now I tell my kids, like, you guys will say ChatGPT. I say to Google. I had after the meeting, I go back and I start Googling, and that's how I learned most of my institutional knowledge.
I think part of my upbringing, being in the Mensa crowd, I learned to sit and just listen for about a year and take it all in.
2 ears, 1 mouth,
right. And ultimately became global head of business development for the company, traveling to Asia and Europe.
Real institutions.
Like real institutions.
Planet level.
Oh, yeah. Sovereign wealth funds.
And you got introduced to this whole new world in real estate. I feel you there. And, talk to us about the business. What were you, head of sales, you said?
Yeah.
And so what were you trying to get them to buy?
Well, I was trying to get them to buy what essentially is a sponsorship to the publication, which offered them the ability to go to these meetings.
Okay.
With the
networking
with the institutional investors.
Sure.
And so there'd be a couple of high-end meetings every year, 2 or 3 days per year. And there'd be 2 meetings, and one in Europe and one in Asia.
And in 2021, you said, I'm going back in head first, back into the abyss. You said, I'm going to be a founder. I'm going to start a company again.
I didn't
Relpi.
want to do that. I really didn't. I actually there was a lot I loved about where I was working, a lot of people I really loved working with, but there was no place for me to grow. I was topped out. The owner, respectfully, it's his company and he owns it, and wasn't gonna offer up a growth.
It's what I touched on earlier. It's when the alignment of pace of growth becomes misaligned.
And it did become misaligned. And I spent a year banging my head against the wall, and I have kind of this own saying in my own life, and I don't know what language you can use here, but I said, for a year, you can say that person is an a-hole,
Mm-hmm.
right? But after a year,
You're the asshole.
you're the
Yeah.
asshole because you stayed, right? And I was like, well, it's
Yeah.
up to me. And we were in COVID, and I had helped create the virtual meetups between the LPs and the GPs on Zoom meetings curated. So I created that there. And I said, well, this seems portable. And frankly, I was not getting hired by anybody.
Mhm.
I was just not in, I didn't have the skill sets for a lot of jobs out there. I'm in media.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe run an association. Some people said I could raise capital for one of these private equity funds. And I said, well, let me try that. So I'd rehearse at home in front of a mirror. And I would just say, hi, I'm Jonathan Schein with ABC Company. And here's our value add, opportunistic fund. And I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth. It just seemed, what they do is so hard.
Come on, you done stand-up comedy.
Okay.
You've done stand-up
Well,
comedy.
I'm just, the respect I have for capital raisers and the organizations behind them is unbelievable what they do. Their skills and their abilities, they're incredible.
All right.
Did you want to talk about stand-up comedy, or did you want to talk about?
Well, I'm gonna.
We'll get there. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the audience has already heard me allude to. You've done stand-up.
Yes.
And I'm like, if you can do stand-up, you can do anything. But you
have to believe in what you're doing.
But hold on, you actually, if you can do stand-up, you can do anything. But if you could do what led to your stand-up, you could do anything. And so I wanted to go through your story, at least professionally.
Okay.
And
we'll go professionally. Okay, then we'll get to that.
We're gonna take it back where we went through, you college and your brokerage business, going to work for your dad, the sale, the PE, the exit, buying your own and it not working out, then going more into a traditional employment role. But at some point in this journey, you got hit with some serious adversity. Yeah.
Yes, early in my life. At 34, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
It's kind of a big deal.
That's a big deal. I was married 11 months, and that kind of puts you in a place of, wow, okay, what do you do, right? My wife at that time, I mean, she didn't sign up for it, but we're still married 30 years, 20,
sounds like a good
30
lady.
years. She's amazing. I had, thank goodness I was working for my dad.
Yeah, I was going to ask where in the
I was
career
working for my dad at the time, so
he was understanding.
Well, yeah, he was very understanding that maybe some other employers may not be, right? And so I went through the surgeries, high-dose chemo therapy, high-dose radiation. It took a couple of years to recover, and that was part of also what led up to selling the business. When I fully recovered, I said, Dad, do we want to go through this again? I mean, I'm not going to get sick again, but do we want to go through this? We're exhausted. Let's figure something else out. But during that time, and I was always kind of the witty guy, right? Always with the wry remark or something. And I saw this little tag for take a stand-up comedy class, a stand-up comedy experience. And I was like, I took it off and I ripped it off, and then I got sick. And while I was going through all of the process, I felt so much of what was going on was so funny. I mean, really funny, that people don't know how funny they are.
I'm only laughing because of what you're saying. I don't find it funny. I'm sure there are parts, but again,
I'll give you a good example. Yeah. I'll give you a good example, even though I switched it up a bit in the routine. You can find it on the web. It's on my website. I went to the NYU hospital. It was wonderful. They took care of me, but sometimes you have to pay. You go for your blood test, and then you reconcile with the healthcare company and all that. And I'm like, I just took a blood test. I've just been diagnosed with cancer, and I'm looking at the bottom of the thing, and it says, "Thank you, come again." And I said, "Are you crazy?
I don't want
to come back. Or why would you say that?"
Yeah.
And she's like,
"I
don't make the rules." And so it was that kind of stuff that
that probably hit.
Yeah, that hit.
Yeah.
Right. And then I just started collecting all this kind of stuff that I said, this stuff is remarkable. And so I said, okay, now I have a point of view. I have something to say, and I'm going to take this class now.
Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions about comedy, but
yeah.
When you got your diagnosis and the doctor walks in and says, Jonathan, you have this, it's I always say, hey, there's no victims. You can be victimized. Like whether you want to, that's a pretty bad moment of being victimized by something that, you know, from what my understanding is totally outside of your control. Like, how did you not really kind of go swimming in the sea of victim mentality and just feel sorry for yourself and let it kind of just you know, weigh you down?
First of all,
Yeah.
a miracle happened that day too. A miracle, because he comes in, and it's like the movies when you're told you have, and they don't say cancer anymore. You have a mass, or you have, you know, we're going to send you to the oncologist. Everything becomes slow motion, like literally, like in those car accident scenes. You just like
What?
your brain just stops. So I called my wife, and
Is it like not even real? Yeah.
it's not real. It's not real. You're not in your body at that time.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to take a subway home. Please meet me at home, because then we have to go. We have an immediate appointment with. I mean, I had to get in quickly. It was a virulent strain, very aggressive. And I'm sitting on the subway, the C train, going uptown, and some gentleman who's promoting a jazz concert at the Apollo, alcohol on his breath. It's 2 PM or 1 PM, and he sits down next to me and he says, you know, some things happen to people and say, why me? And all of a sudden, and then he says, and I say, why not me? And I was like, oh my. And
It's almost like someone was talking to you, right?
like, oh no, that was a gift. I mean, that was
Yeah.
something like just like an angel. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm getting a little worked up, but I mean,
Yeah.
that really, and Cynthia came home, and I told her that story, and I said, okay,
You can do this.
we're doing it.
Yeah.
Why not me? And I was like, so I did not, I mean, look, when you're having chemotherapy, you don't feel too good. You know, and you feel like a victim, and you feel like crap. But I kept that with me. Why not me?
Yeah. And you beat it.
Yeah.
What was that like? Yeah. I mean, in my understanding, cancer, it's like you can always come back, but it's been
28 years, and
which is great.
Next month. Yeah.
So what was the moment, fast forward 11 months, and again, it can always come back like they're like, hey, you're cancer free, where you maybe allowed yourself to say, I did it.
You know, there's something deep inside of you that never lets you off the hook.
Sure.
I mean, you go through life and you get other things as you get older, but there's something in there that says, you know, don't ever feel that safe.
Yeah, I bet that probably changed your perspective on it.
It does.
Something as simple as a good dinner, you almost like soak it in more, right?
But I will say this, in my professional life, and this is where it really carried me, from being acquired by ALM and also my last job, I always go back to this one thing. Did I beat cancer to feel this way? And I did not beat cancer to feel this way today. And that's sort of what
it helps you snap out of a
right
bad
out of
mood,
it. Or it makes me, motivates me to go to another place.
Now, that's got to take courage. Also, standing on stage doing comedy takes courage. I guess part of what I'd love for you to share with me and the audience is like, I'll speak for myself and listeners, like there's a lot of things in life we want to do and we're like, oh, this is so scary, right? What process, what routine, or just simply put, how did you, I guess cancer, you don't really have a choice, but you don't. Yeah, but stand-up comedy, you have a choice.
I have a choice, yes.
And yet you did it anyway. Like, how do you overcome fear?
In that particular case, I was so driven to do this. I mean, oh, believe me, I get stage fright every time I did it. Yeah. And that's not, but I had this drive in me to tell this story about my cancer experience. And I felt that, you know, it's not exactly common comedy fodder, right? And, you know, everybody's talking about their wives, their girlfriends, their boyfriends, the kids, they went to the store, and all of a sudden I get up there and go, hey, by the way, and they're like, huh? And you bring them in, because there's no one in this world that hasn't had a cancer experience, whether it's their own family member, a friend. And so how do you... You
definitely get the crowd on your side.
You get the people...
Which is half the battle, right?
But they're like, how is he going to...
I mean, no one's going to boo you.
No one's going to be... No, not necessarily, but no.
Most people won't
boo you.
Only the really drunk people.
Yeah, they were really rude.
Yeah. How could you boo me?
Seriously?
Yeah.
But if you can get it breaks through, right? And I really believe this, and we spoke about this earlier. We live in a very polarized time, and my feeling is that if we could get down to the basics, that it's very simple. Cancer doesn't care who you voted for, right? Doesn't care what your religion is, your race, your ethnicity, even your pronoun. It's cancer, and it treats us all the same on some level. And if we could evolve from that place, Thanksgivings would be a lot quieter and happier.
Sure.
And I really believe that.
That's a great perspective.
You know, I mean, like, think of a fireman or firewoman. They don't ask you who you voted for when they run into a building. They go in, they carry out.
Yeah.
And they're not going to say, should we administer oxygen because you voted for X, Y, and Z? And it's a complete belief system.
So you beat cancer, you do stand up. I mean, not that everything after that is easy. No, like
it's not. You go out of business. I mean, you know.
Yes, but definitely helps having that to draw from, right?
Sure.
Would you say you're I don't want to say better in your role, but
it's
like
a well.
Yeah, it's a well.
It's a
That's
well
a good way to put
that
it.
you can draw from.
So, I mean, we touched on earlier what you're working on today, but like, what does the future look like for Relpi? What are you looking to do with this? Where do you want to take it?
Oh, well, right now, when I started it in 2021, excuse me, I wasn't expecting it to be where it is. It was a hope, a dream to have my own, just be successful at something, right? Not that I wasn't successful before, but I had this in me. I'm like, I know I got one more in me. What's it going to be? And
Last dance.
I got one in me, and it turns out you always have more than one in you if you're built like this. I've got plenty in me, but this was like, this is it. And I said to my wife when we launched it, March 31st, 2021, if we don't have 15 accounts by the end of the year, I'll shut it down. And I know that there's some executive recruiters I could get a job with because I'm pretty well known in the industry. By the end of the year, we had 22. I said, okay, this is really happening. And the concept that I came up with for this company for meetings and events is taking off. And by the end of the second year, end of 2022, we had 41 or 42 members. And now we have over 80.
And how many events are you doing?
12 or 13 a year
around the
U.S. and a couple in London and Amsterdam.
Interesting.
Yeah, one in Toronto as well.
And we started off like, real estate. You feel like it's momentum's coming back.
Yeah, it is. And what we do is a little different as opposed to the big conferences. We go, which try to, in this space, trying to recruit the LPs to come to their events. We go to where the LPs reside and bring the managers to the money, like Willie Sutton did when he robbed banks.
Makes sense.
Yeah, where the money is.
Amsterdam, London, but obviously stateside, New York, LA, Dallas.
New York, Austin is a much more important market than Dallas.
Yeah, good point.
Sacramento.
Yeah, because
CalSTRS and CalPERS. Yeah, I mean, that's the two biggest pension funds.
The taxes are so high out there. They got a lot of money.
Yeah.
They got a lot of pension obligations, too.
They do, and we're here to help them.
There you go.
Grow their pension funds.
Fulfill their promises. They make a lot of promises.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not on their promise board, but, they... we
South
go
Florida.
to Chicago, South Florida. We just did something in Raleigh and Columbus. Cleveland is one of our biggest events of the year.
Go Browns.
Yeah, you're familiar with them.
One of these years.
You and Bernie Kosar.
Bernie's my guy.
There you go, lefty.
I love Bernie. How would you? I'm going to generalize here. How would you describe your mentality and looking back at your life and whether it's stand up with cancer, obviously those are, but even professional sense, how you've attacked, approached, and the success you achieved. Like if you had to choose a word to describe the mentality at which you've approached your responsibilities in all your different roles.
In one word?
You can use a couple words.
I look at it this way. Every day is a bonus.
Yeah.
Every day I'm here, I think I won. After that, it all kind of cascades from there.
Yeah, it certainly provides perspective.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Is there a way someone could find that perspective without having to go through what you went through?
Sure. Absolutely. Because as you said, life throws you a lot of curveballs, right? And you don't need to have the worst thing happen to you, but life isn't linear. And just know every day you're here is a plus.
Mhm.
And you've won the day by being here. And how do you teach somebody that? I don't know. I really don't know. It comes from something within. We all have our doubts, every one of us. And it's really just getting through those and knowing those doubts don't hurt us, or they don't have to hurt us. And I like to think of life as a big playground.
Mhm.
And it is a big playground if you choose to want it to be a playground. A lot of it's a choice.
With all the different, I guess, hats you've worn, is the street broker, coming up in the company your dad founded, to the PE shop, to the startup you've done. Is there a specific resource that you would guide the audience to? I always say, is there a book? Is there a talk? Is there a?
I'm gonna say this,
Sure.
and this one, and I don't say everybody should take a stand-up comedy class. Okay, it's not for everybody.
Yeah, that's
okay?
pretty good.
But I really believe everybody goes to these continuing educations. I'm gonna get my executive MBA. I'm gonna get the MBA, which are important. But I think it's really important to develop the other side of your brain. And I think for any young professional, or even a professional of your age, my age, take a class that develops that, a writing class, a singing class, a dancing class. It takes you outside of your comfort zone, and it gives you a different way to think. What I learned from stand-up comedy wasn't about telling a story. It was about listening to the audience. I learned to listen and pick up what they were thinking. And when you bombed, you knew you bombed. And that's painful. That's a death by 1,000 cuts. And when you succeeded, there was no better high. But you learned to listen and read the room, and learning how to read people. And I don't mean in a cynical way, but in an empathetic way.
Mm-hmm.
And you need a lot of empathy to stand up on stage and tell stories.
Yeah.
That would be the resource I would go to, and I will continue to take classes for the rest of my life.
Great. Stand-up comedy. There you go. Everybody sign up.
Right. Stand Up New York Experience.
Is that what is that?
I don't know if it's still in business. I don't know. It's a while ago.
Yeah. Another one that I've heard is, it's more the comedy, like the Toastmasters. You're getting back to like do something that's kind of outside of your, I guess, realm of comfort or your day to day.
A lot of people, and and not everybody has to be a public speaker. But if you're writing corporate reports, you take a creative writing course, and obviously you don't want to be creative with your financials, but maybe there's a different way of telling that story that brings investors in and entices them and it makes them more interested in what you're having to offer. And you're offering memorandums. Send your marketing people. Sorry. For those types of things, you wouldn't believe the benefits that come from that.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It's just stand-up comedy is wild, man, because it's just such courage, because I love comedy. I think a lot of people do, and I think it's kind of like almost watching a movie or watching a game when you observe something you love. And I'll speak for myself, but again, I think I speak for a lot of people. You kind of like, man, I'd love to do that, but I'll just it's just the fear standing. So I admire your courage. I got to develop my own courage.
Well, look, you do your own stand-up when you do your own meetings.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
You do.
Yeah.
So it's not.
But everybody here is effectively paid to laugh at my jokes. I don't know if I'm actually funny or not.
Okay.
Like, I think they're just like, I feel like I got to
They just
laugh.
laughed. They just laughed.
Yeah. But again, he doesn't know if I don't know if he's laughing because Zach.
I think you're funny.
But I don't even know if he really thinks that.
No.
Okay, Zach, that's going on your review plus 3 points.
There you go. Doesn't mean he's getting a raise, but he thinks you're funny.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, I can't thank you enough. Congratulations on all your success professionally. Congratulations on overcoming the adversity, man. That's hardcore, and I was excited. And thank you for sharing that because I know it's personal.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing we need to know about our business, it's very personal.
Yeah,
and that's something that a lot of people forget. That we're just people in a room trying to make something happen.
Well, speaking of people in a room, I look forward to coming to one of your events.
Anytime.
Just make me the keynote speaker, and I'll talk about the strong to really strong, institutional equity markets.
Yeah. Chris,
Yeah.
obviously, you're an expert.
Well, in my defense, I actually know a lot more
I know
now
you
than
do.
I used to.
We've been talking,
but
it's a tough one to learn.
I
Right?
had to fake it till I made it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I ever made it, but
You're
I was
making
good
it.
faking
Looks. You have your own studio. I mean, this
is pretty
sweet.
certified.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah.
All right, thanks for coming. This was great.
This was an honor.
Awesome. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Yeah.